Hi, everybody, and thank you for your attention. My name is Carly, and I'm going to be leading this talk today. To begin, I want you to take a moment and imagine the last time you spent in nature. Whether you were swimming at the beach, hiking through the forest, or just walking your dog through the park. Think about how you felt when you finished this activity. Did you feel relaxed, happy, inspired, or tense, stressed, and upset? Throughout the next 10 minutes, we're going to uncover the scientific reasons why you likely have positive associations with this memory, discovering how our relationship with nature has lasting impacts on the well-being of children, adults, and ultimately our society and the environment. To help us illustrate the science, let me introduce two imaginary characters, Sage and Shelley, who are identical twins separated at birth. On one side of the country, we have Sage, who is growing up in a small coastal community in Oregon. On the other side of the country, we have our second twin, Shelley, who is growing up in the heart of New York City. As Sage and Shelley go from children to adults, we'll come to understand why we should all be making spending time in the outdoors a priority in our lives. Our story begins with our twins, Sage and Shelley, who have just turned 10 years old. Living on the coast of Oregon, Sage has plenty of opportunities to get outside. Every day after school, Sage's parents let her play in the woods and fields behind her house. Sage loves exploring and always comes back with a new story about a creature she found. Living in New York City, Shelley spends most of her time inside and rarely gets outside to play by herself. When she isn't at school, Shelley is usually at home, watching TV or playing on her iPad. Though Shelley is a bright child, she has a difficult time paying attention in class. As you can see, Sage and Shelley are living very different lives. Can you think of any potential issues from Shelley spending almost all her time indoors? To start, we can see that Shelley isn't getting much physical activity. Just as many of us spend too much time on our cell phones or in front of the TV, children are also becoming less active. Did you know the average child spends about 7.5 hours per day consuming some form of electronic media? It really isn't a surprise that many studies show that children like Sage, who spend a lot of time outdoors, also get more physical activity. Beyond getting very little physical activity, Shelley is missing out on what is called unstructured playtime in the outdoors. This is time where a child has the freedom to play as they wish without any organized activity or sport. The science shows us that unstructured playtime is important for healthy brain development and teaches children how to share, negotiate, and advocate for themselves. Like me, I'm guessing when many of you think back on your childhood, some of the fondest memories you have are when you were engaged in this sort of unstructured playtime in the outdoors. Did anybody else notice that Shelley had trouble concentrating in school, but Sage didn't? We'd think since they are twins, they'd be similarly predisposed to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, because this is largely determined by our genetics. There are several studies that show that when we are exposed to nature, this helps restore our attention reserves and helps us focus on tasks without getting distracted. Now that we understand a little bit about how children can be positively impacted by the outdoors, let's continue our story with Sage and Shelley as they graduate high school and start college as adults. Again, pay special attention to the differences you notice between Sage and Shelley's relationship with the outdoors. Like many of us, Sage and Shelley chose colleges close to their homes, with Sage going to Lewis and Clark College in Portland and Shelley going to New York University in New York City. At Lewis and Clark College, Sage lives in an apartment building close to campus which looks onto a beautiful forest park, and her commute is just a short bike ride or walk through the park. Though Sage is under a lot of pressure at school, she manages to maintain good physical and mental health. And she also just joined a hiking club, which meets every weekend. At New York University, Shelley lives in a tiny dorm room, and like many New Yorkers, her bedroom window looks onto a brick wall with no single living thing in sight. Shelley likes to visit museums and parties on the weekends, and rarely gets outside of the city. Shelley goes to the gym frequently, but still has a difficult time keeping her stress levels under control. Did anybody notice that Shelley exercised at the gym while Sage exercised outdoors? Now, we all know that exercising is great for our health in general, but the science tells us that exercising outdoors is even more beneficial to us. In one study, researchers had people run through their college campus in a more natural setting and they found that these people had reduced negative emotions when they returned from their run, where people just exercising on the treadmill in the gym did not at all. Exercising outdoors has also been found to reduce anxiety and improve mood and self-esteem. Beyond exercising, the science tells us that simply spending time outdoors helps us relax, and there are many studies that show that our blood pressure and pulse rate are reduced after walking in a natural environment compared to an urban environment. In our story, we saw that Sage had the opportunity to bike or walk to school through a local forest park. It turns out that forests have special properties unlike even other natural environments that help to support our well-being. Have you ever noticed that forests have a specific earthy scent? Part of that earthy smell you experience in a forest is made up of phytoncides, which are compounds trees release into the air, and you can think of these phytoncides as forest natural air freshener. Researchers in Japan have connected some of these phytoncides to a reduction in stress hormones and an increase in white blood cells, which, if you think back to high school biology, help keep our immune systems running properly. Where natural environments were helping to support Sage, we also found that Shelley was missing these daily encounters with nature in her life. Remember, Shelley couldn't even see a single living thing out her window. There are many studies that show that just a simple view of nature out our window can improve our lives substantially. One study found that people recovering from surgery recovered faster when they had a natural view out their window compared to an urban view. In the workplace, we see that people have better job satisfaction and are less stressed when they have a nice view of nature out their window. This is not surprising to me at all because I have not spent a single workday in my windowless grad student office since I started my program last September. So far, we've talked about how Sage and Shelley's differing experiences in the outdoors may have impacted their well-being. But now let's flip this idea and think about how Sage and Shelley's experiences in the outdoors may be affecting the environment itself. Keeping that in mind, let's fast forward to Sage and Shelley's lives at 30. In our story, Sage is still living in Portland and she works as an environmental planner. She is mindful to keep her impact on the planet low and does so by recycling, biking to work, and eating mostly a vegan diet. She still loves hiking and camping and now also climbs mountains in her free time. Shelley still lives in New York City and is a successful financial advisor for a large bank. She makes more than enough money and spends it on the ever-shifting fashion and design trends that she sees on social media. Now, Shelley is aware of the environmental issues we face, but feels that recycling is the only realistic thing she can do to help. Knowing all that we do about how Sage and Shelley grew up, are you really surprised that Shelley views the environment differently than Sage? According to the science, it is no coincidence that Sage is more environmentally conscious than Shelley. Many studies have shown that the more you are connected with nature, the more you have a desire to protect nature. And naturally, when you have more desire to protect nature, the more likely you are to engage in behaviors such as recycling, taking public transportation to work, or even signing environmental petitions. This is especially true for people like Sage who grew up around nature. When you grow up around nature and connect with nature at a young age, you form a bond with the outdoors that lasts a lifetime. Staying connected with nature also helps the environment in other ways, such as increasing our ability to exert self-control and wait for distant payoffs rather than needing instant gratification now. Perhaps a hike will help me stop ordering things on Amazon out of boredom that I just end up returning anyway. Am I right? Finally, it is clear that our society benefits from people spending more time in the outdoors. People that are more connected with nature have aspirations to develop deeper relationships in their lives and also aspirations to help improve our society. These people also tend to think more holistically, creatively, and have better problem-solving abilities. Given all that we've learned in this talk, I hope you will make spending time in nature a priority in your life. As we saw in our story about Sage and Shelley, spending time in nature can make a considerable positive impact on the lives of children and adults. For children, nature helps them stay physically active, supports healthy brain development, and helps them to stay focused in school. For adults, Nature helps us de-stress, supports our immune systems, and overall gives us better quality of life. Finally, when we experience these benefits nature gives us, we tend to give back more to the environment and ultimately have a smaller impact on the planet. I hope you all enjoyed this talk. Please let me know if you have any questions afterwards. Thank you for listening.